Greetings, ladies and mental gents, and welcome to my channel, where I like to make audio narrations of various stories from the internet. In this video, we'll be focusing on a story from the subreddit HFY, called Food for Thought 16, Home Cooking, written by Level 25 Human Nerd. The link to the original will be in the description down below. And, as always, I hope that you enjoy. It's simple. I believe the cosmic balance of things. Call it a twist of karma if you want. I believe that there's only so much stuff that can happen at one time and only so often. When a bunch of small things go wrong, I'm happy. It means that the next thing to go wrong won't be as bad. But if things go right for a while, if a mission is going perfectly as planned, I get terrified because that means the universe is saving up all that negative stuff to dump on us all at once. Cypher 6, UCH Special Forces. To say that Alexander was nervous was an understatement. He knew the gilt halls and antique stylings of the manor well. Drones and robot attendants passed him by, repeating pre-recorded greetings that they had long ago memorized. The smell, old wood and leather, of oil paintings and the faint tang of ozone, smells of brushed metal and wax candles. He remembered his 16th birthday and a grand party, meeting his brother and sister for the first time, learning of who and what he was. His feet tapped in a slow staccato against the crimson velvet that seemed like a river of blood. His polished boots and crisp dress blacks still a little stiff in his newness. His ferry along the river Styx. Ahead lay the thick polished oak doors that marked the gates to his own personal hell. The doors weren't as big as they had been back then. Or maybe he wasn't as small. Too old varnish was a little more worn out despite the automated maintenance, and there was a bit more dirt stuck in the deep grooves of the engravings. On one door huddled a collection of men and women, huddled in fear save for one brave soul reaching skyward. On the other, a flaming figure handing a torch down to a pitiful humans below. Alex traced his fingers against the carvings for a moment. He remembered spending hours here in the waning years of his youth, wondering which of these figures he and his siblings were supposed to be. The humans, huddled in freezing cold and ignorance, the flame, passed down by the so-called god to usher humanity forward. Or were they supposed to be Prometheus, beings of near-divine power, come to show humanity the way? He never got his answer back then. Now, standing here again, he couldn't bring himself to try and figure it out. Smoothing out his uniform and tucking his cap under his arm, Alex grabbed onto the polished brass handle and pulled the door wide before walking in with his back straight and his chest forward. He was a UCH trooper now, and he wasn't going to make his fleet look bad, especially not here. If the familiar had felt different outside and vast study, inside everything was frozen in time. Not a speck of dust was out of place from what he remembered. Even the haphazard cluster on the desk was the same. Half-finished machines lined up on one wall, while the massive hollow screen dominated the other. At the back sat a collection of books touching on every aspect of biology, robotics, and philosophy. The desk itself was a solid redwood slab, and an ebony frame of high-backed crushed velvet chair overlooked the scene. Cradled in its plush warmth sat a single most terrifying thing that Alex had ever known. The man was thin and frail-looking, his skin mottled with age and pale from the lack of sunshine. His hair was a little more than a wispy halo, and Alex swore that he could hear the bones creaking even across the room. His simple trousers and shirt hung loose on his frame, and his lab coat was far too big. But as the trooper shut the door behind him, the old man looked up. Piercing grey eyes bored through the young man, steel grey that shone like daggers in the moonlight. The man may have been an ancient, but those eyes showed just how keen his mind was inside there remained. Yes, 03, he croaked, those eyes narrowing slightly in the same thinly veiled disgust that tainted the question. The surge of anger reminded Alex to breathe. It had been years since he had seen his father, and this is how he's welcomed home. His face hardened into a calm mask that had been custom crafted for him by his drill instructors. Dr. Krevnikov, I hoped I'm not intruding. I'm shipping out in a couple of days and wanted to update you on my progress. He replied curtly. His hand clenched at his side as he watched the heartfelt reunion that he'd hoped for die a screaming in the fire. Will there be anything specific that you would like me to report during my service? The old man's body started to shake slightly as he returned to his notes. Ripping a hand dismissively, you and your military have nothing to report to me about. I have no time for your misguided fights of fancy of a failed experiment. 1,000 words boiled at Alex's lips like dragon fire. A failed experiment? Is that how he saw them as? Living bits of data to poke and prod for answers that he had no questions to, while throwing away the ones that didn't give him the results that he liked. Is that how he saw the 2,500 who didn't make it to birth? Is that how he saw the almost 300 that died in labs? Anger burned inside of him, and with the heat that he saw the star, as he swallowed the toxic words and he snapped his heels together, turned and marched back out of the door. He slammed the door shut a little harder than he felt that he should have, but the old man had it coming as far as he was concerned. The scents and sounds of his childhood felt bitter in his heart. Each step was a hammer blow, and it drove the nail deeper. He was done with this place, done with everyone and everything inside it. He'd take the shuttle back to St. Petersburg, find a good hotel, and spend the rest of his leave in his own terms. Sasha? Alex froze and exhaled slowly. The anger settled into his gut as a voice, and when he turned around, it was with a tired smile on his face. The woman frowned with worry in the junction of the two hallways, her black hair falling straight down on her back. It didn't go well. Alex nodded. No, it didn't, Natasha. Not sure why I expected it to go otherwise, he replied with a note of lingering bitterness on his lips. His sister gave him a look and stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him to hug him close. Don't worry about Papa, you're here. You're home. Let's go and make something to eat while we talk, yes? The elder sibling couldn't help but smile and return the embrace. Natasha may have been one of the youngest in the family, but she always seemed to be able to calm everyone down, make them feel welcome and worthwhile. Natasha pressed Alex for details on his training as they walked to the menace kitchen, waving off the server bots as they went. She didn't mind the vague replies that she got from her brother as long as he kept talking. It was an old trick that she'd learned from her foster family. The more someone talks about something unrelated, the more they forget why they were angry. The woman was a little concerned that his answers practically screamed classified within almost every question beyond basic training. Any talk of the military, though, was forgotten in an instant the moment that they stepped into the kitchens. She had insisted on keeping the manor as modern and up-to-date as possible, despite the classic decor. The shining chrome and stainless steel that greeted them was a testament to that. Alexander's face lit up at the sight, and he was quick to take over from there, hanging his jacket and cap, rolling up his sleeves and grabbing a large apron. Natasha pulled up a stool to where she could be out of his way and still talk to him comfortably. He was washing some choice potatoes when she spoke up next. Why didn't you just do this instead, Sasha? You love to cook. You could have gone to the culinary school, hosted a cooking show, become a teacher, opened a restaurant of your own, perhaps, she suggested, watching him work with a smile. You know why I chose to enlist, Natasha. The Dashtar are a bigger threat than most people realize. They are staying well away from the core and inner spheres, but how long? The mid-regions are already seeing scattered incursions. The outer sphere is still a war zone, and we're no closer to retaking the frontier than when they first attacked us, he replied with a frown. I get it. I'm just one guy, but I have to do something to help. This is why we were born, to help humanity. By advancing the species through science and social guidance, Natasha cut in. We were to be the stepping stones, remember? The first generation to go and forge a path without having to rely on terraforming operations and risky augmentations. Well, that won't mean anything if there is no one left to guide. The two looked at each other in silence, Alex taking a breath and returning to his work as the potatoes soaked and he got the gravy going. We can do things no one else can, Natasha. Accelerated adaptation, increased development thresholds. You have the potential to retain more information in your head than anyone else in the galaxy. Dmitri can photosynthesize, Anastasia can lift the shuttle, and Imran can slowly turning himself into a cyborg now that he's discovered that he once suffered techno-organic rejection syndrome. He paused long enough to stir the gravy and lower the heat down to a simmer, adding a little bit of flour to the mix. We can do all the colonizing and advancement we want, but it won't mean a thing if humanity is torn apart by argon-breathing roaches before that. Natasha simply watched as he gave a faint sigh, nodding after a moment. You are right, Sasha, but we worry about you. Even Papa, though he's too old to figure out how to say it. Your family, and we don't want to lose you. Just promise me you'll be careful, no matter where you end up going. Please try and stay safe, and come home to us. Alex set the oil heat up and the stove and turned to give his sister a smile. I promise, sis, don't worry, I'll be fine. Situation report. Hostile walkers disabled. Hostile infantry reduced to 42% of original strength. Remaining hostiles appear to be retreating. System status. Alexander grunted between heavy panting breaths. Everything seemed a bit hazy as his suppressants began to wear off. He considered the stim shots, but even with his ability to quickly adapt to changes, it would be a shock to his body that might cause issues, and he didn't have time to wait and see. Structural integrity at 78%, shield recharge rate reduced by 32%, pilot integrity estimated at 58%, medical attention required. Primary weapons ammunition 23%, secondary weapon ammunition 100%, hardpoint A ammunition depleted, hardpoint B ammunition HE 2 rounds flares depleted, countermeasures depleted. Alex sighed and poked his head back around his cover, ignoring the small arms fire that was haphazardly being sent in his vague direction. The SOM insurgents were falling back, and the Sabari pirates had vanished. It stank of a trap, but the insurgents were in chaos. Their retreat was not an organized one like the pirates had been. Alice, do we still have the green team's ingress marked? He asked, eyeing the main facility. Affirmative, marking entry. The human turned his attention to the green outline that appeared on his HUD. It was a short sprint, but he'd be exposed. He'd hoped that there would be enough chaos to avoid too much notice, then moved. He emptied out his rifle's magazine in a wide spray of fire, ejecting the drum and loading one of the two remaining. The depleted carbine folded over his shoulder automatically, and he stowed the launcher on one side for later. Every fifth step was joined by a burst from his jump pack to propel him forward through the fresh hail of gunfire being aimed his way. His personal shields crackled and sparkled as they slid into cover by the base and ducked inside. There was no time for him to rest, though. 3 hostiles were investigating the hallway. One dropped and burst into the head. The second was grabbed by the titanium claws and howled down as the third was dropped by another burst. The one he had pinned struggled underfoot, snarling, insulting and expletives that the translator could only partially pick up. Hold still and keep your claws where I can see them. Why were you called back? He demanded, turning his weapon towards the male. I will tell you nothing, demon. Give me a warrior's death and be done with it. You will be drawn in the blood of the tyrants you blindly follow. The tirade continued steadily as Alex realized he'd get nothing from this one. A sharp lift and a shove against the wall served to knock the pirate out, and he moved on, delving deeper into the complex, and his steady determination drilled into him by the fleet service. His display showed a rough location after the 3 fire teams, but comms were still shaky. Again the word trap echoed in his mind. The others were converging on where the central control room should be. They were moving quicker than expected, and even he was meeting no further resistance aside from the trio at the entrance. He flexed his hand around his rifle and round. Every step felt wrong. Every corridor he passed felt out of place. He paused at the blast door, emblazoned with the crimson sigil of the Sons of Mars. The control panel had been blown apart, and there were small bloodstains on the floor. The translator unit read the location panel nearby as Hangar 3, the same place where the cultish separatists had emerged from earlier. Mark location for clearing. We'll take another look once the reinforcements show up. He moved on, picking up the pace as he got closer and closer to the others. Alice checked short-range comms. How is the interface? Testing. Proximity to friendly units is clearing through external signal interference. Good enough. Alert, alert. Friendly units, this is Green Lead. I'm inbound from your 6. Check fire. He reported, pausing at the joining corridor nearby. He waited for a moment, then smiled as Recklo's voice filtered through. Copy, Green Lead. Good to hear you're still alive. Strike team holding position. Area secured. Marked FOB4. The female replied, and a new mark appeared on his HUD. Alex slipped around the corner and was met by 2 of the others holding their weapons aimed his way. Once they had a visual on him, though, they turned to the barrels the hallway behind him. The human shifted the opacity of his visor and offered the others a smile, glad to see them again and mostly unharmed. Snetchel's armor had a constellation of small holes in the outer fabric, but nothing had penetrated. Recklo had a few cuts and scrapes, and no one on the others, and his leg had a sling. Back Beta Recklo, report. Area cleared and secured. Beta Snetchel encountered a large group of humans in one of the hangars, and took small arms fire. She had an entrance sealed before her team, and came here to regroup. Charges are set and ready. The control room lies beyond the door. She spoke up, nodding to a pair of double doors that were being covered by 5 of the warriors. Good. Blue lead, red lead, blow the charges. Olhana and Snetchel nodded and pulled the trigger switches from their pouches, counted to 3 and hit the buttons. Silence. Gathered warriors looked at each other in confusion, both fire team leaders trying to gain and again, to no avail. Alice? Signal to receivers is active. Theory, detonators may have been disconnected from the charge fuses if discovered. This was bad. Very, very bad. He turned his attention to the doors again, and thought the situation over. They'd been found out. That's why the rogue Sabari had been called back. And the charges disabled, there was only one way to shut down the base defenses in time. Squad, form up. Prep to breach and clear. Expect very heavy resistance. If you can move, I want you with me. Everyone else will cover the area and keep it secured. They were walking into a trap. He knew that. His troops knew that. There would be no big plan to help them through this. Just each other. Alex triple-checked his gear, readied one of his remaining HE charges to act as a breaching round, and took the point position next to the door. Once the breaching team was in place, he set the charge against the door, diverting power from his jump pack to the shields and hit the trigger. The twin doors slammed inward and the concussive thump, and before the heavy metal stabs hit the floor, Alex was inside, firing through a cloud of smoke and dust at anything that moved. End of Part 16. If you enjoyed this story and wish to support the author, the link is down below. If you would like to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so. They will also be listed in the description down below. But the easiest way to help this channel is to share it, subscribe, and like. And, as always, I will see you all in the next video, and I hope that you have a good one. Cheers!